Today is May 20th, 2025. I've been getting lots of stuff, but I'm not clear on what I'm going to talk about today, or what's going to come out of my mouth today. So I'm just going to listen for a minute. Yesterday I filmed a video that when I was editing it or finalizing it last night, I wound up calling it The Basis of Everything. And it was just a quick overview. I mean, it's the basis of the Christian Science teachings, I guess. Mrs. Eddy's teachings, not to be confused with the current church and religion, which isn't teaching what Mrs. Eddy was teaching and why Mrs. Eddy was here. They're confused, mesmerized. They think that her whole purpose was to come to teach us how to heal bodily ailments and physical illness. They believe she was here to bring an alternative healthcare system, an alternative to the medical route, which was more based on us being spiritual beings, but still, their conceptions, for the most part, are that belief that she was here just to teach us how to heal the body and to have this great, wonderful, mortal life. But, thinking about my video yesterday, the basis of everything is we are all spirit. We are all one. There's not like me and you. We're one. We have different, as one, we still have an identity, an individuality. It's not in matter, but we still have an individuality, but we are all one, have the same source, have the same mind. We're all eternal beings. We're all immortal. We all are infinite intelligence, omnipresent. The only presence and the infinite presence. Omniscience, all-knowing, all-seeing, all-acting, all-wise. We are all that, because there's only one. There's a belief among church scientists or religious Christian scientists that there's two. There's us and God, and we are God's reflections. That's when you first start learning Christian Science. That's the kindergarten teaching. And Mrs. Eddy does talk about, man is the reflection of God. She does, if you read the Science and Health from that basis, you could understand or mistakenly believe that kindergarten teaching for a lifetime that you and God, you're God's reflection. You're still one, but you reflect him or God, and you're not your own being at all. And those were necessary teachings, because she was teaching to Christians in the late 1800s who their only concept of God was this man in the sky, or this, this judging being, this ultimate judge that's putting all its children to tests, and the original sin and all that stuff. She was up against a lot of false teachings, a lot of stuff that wasn't in the Bible and that Jesus didn't teach, and mistranslations of the Bible, misunderstanding of Jesus's teachings. She was up against a lot. And so if you look at her original teachings, like her teachings that she taught people in the beginning of her teaching career, she does say man is the image and likeness of God. And then she goes on to say, but you are not man or woman. You are the soul, and men and women are your ideas and reflections. She did skip ahead to the truth when she first started teaching, to the absolute truth. But what she found is that they weren't ready for it, and they couldn't skip. The people that she was teaching couldn't skip, because the ego, mortal mind, it's going to go right to, oh, that means I'm God, and I'm, all powerful, and I can do what I want, and I have the ultimate power of the universe, and going around telling everyone I'm God, and that's what Christian Science teaches. And it would have derailed the teachings of Christian Science, which the importance of Christian Science was to get some teaching about handling evil into mortal thought, to allow it to, it was leaven, to allow it to change mortal thought over time. And it would have derailed that purpose of hers if she would have continued teaching that way. So she changed her teachings, and she taught, that we are God's reflection. If God were to look in a mirror, God would see us. And so she taught from the perspective of the mesmerized self. Like, we are all mesmerized to believe. We somehow fell. For a moment, we had this, what the Course in Miracles calls the tiny mad idea of separation, this belief that we fell from our oneness, and now we're two. We're a mind in matter, and God is spirit. So instead of teaching the absolute truth, she realized, well, the mesmerized self is going to take those teachings and make a mockery of them. Going to run around saying, me in matter, my form, I'm God. Matter is God. And that's exactly the opposite of Christian Science. God is not in matter. Matter is simply our thoughts made visible to us. It's nothing in and of itself. It's not substantial. So she found out early on in her teachings that who she was teaching. She's teaching the mesmerized selves. And you can't teach the mesmerized selves right off the bat that they are infinite, all power, immortal, eternal, all knowing, all seeing, all acting, all wise, that they are the creator and one with all of creation. Because to them, their I is the material being, the self, the personality, the form that you're looking at in the video. And So she got understood pretty soon. It was made clear to her she couldn't do that. So when she formed this, she moved the science of man, which was her original teachings, they became the chapter Recapitulation in Science and Health. That became the foundation of teaching in Christian Science. And in fact, the manual says that primary class teaching should be solely focused on the chapter of recapitulation. Recapitulation is the foundation of teaching Christian Science at the current time. So in class, you're supposed to just be learning from recapitulation. We did not. The teachers of today have moved away from that. Both myself and my husband's teachers, you did have to. My teacher skirted around it by every day. He'd have someone read a small section, like a Q&A, a question and answer from recapitulation. But the rest of his teachings were all over the place. I mean, my God, the citations that we had, he was teaching everything. He had taken it upon himself to try and teach all of Christian Science. And his class sessions were mostly focused on the synonyms. So much synonym talk, just like, hey, the synonyms are good, but like, they are not the basis and foundation of Christian Science. They are a part of the teaching. So if you want to know what she wants new students of Christian Science to know, you would read the chapter Recapitulation in Science and Health. So her teachings kind of changed from basically coming out and telling people what I talked about yesterday to something that the mesmerized self, the mortal mind, the human ego could digest and not make a mockery of so soon into I mean, it has now, but the truth of it, like, to someone like us or me that was born into Christian Science, born into the religion and the church, and there is no one out there telling you, well, the teachings were for the beginner or the novice in Christian Science, and you're no longer a novice. You're no longer in the kindergarten classes of Christian Science, and there's more to it. I think because they don't know there's more to it. I think a lot of them really don't know. Well, I know they don't. We know they don't. It's obvious they don't know there's more to it. I mean, anyone who's was born into it either left or is frustrated with it or is staying because they think, well, something's got to give, something, or maybe they really enjoy the camaraderie of church. Well, for whatever reason. There's far more to it than that. And that's what yesterday's video was about, was the basis of everything, and that we are spirit, we are soul, we are a divine being, we are infinite spirit. And there seemed to be a second where we thought we were separate from God. Spirit sees its thoughts if it wants to. So everything that you're seeing are the thoughts of spirit, of us, of soul. A soul is really our identity. So I can say, I think soul might be easier. or the great I am, or the higher self. We are that. When you look around you, you're just seeing your thoughts and the collective thoughts of mankind. It's not the whole universe. In the universe, there's far more than this going on. There's worlds upon worlds upon worlds of individual beings in different states and stages of existence, and they're experiencing many different and far different experiences. It doesn't change the fact that as a being, they are soul, and they're seeing their thoughts. And as you progress and ascend, you have control over where you see them. You have more control over your thoughts because of many reasons, and you also have control over whether you see them or not. You don't need to see them. The less you believe that what you see is what you get, that what you see is reality, the less you really need to see them. And at some point, you don't need to see them at all. You're just a mind, or just a being, a soul, and is a presence. And you maintain an individuality all through that. You're never absorbed into like a whole where you operate as a whole without individual choice or understanding. It's just your individuality isn't anymore connected to or tied to your belief in matter, or your belief that matter is real, that what you see, matter can just be defined as, you could just say matter is what you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. It is not substantial in itself. So when I talk about matter, I'm just talking about the visible manifestation, or the, what you smell, what you hear, what you taste, the five senses. So as you progress, you're no longer believing that's you, the body, that identity. Oh, that's not me. And I realize that's like I'm seeing my thoughts, and maybe I'm seeing where currently how I see myself individually, like how I feel who I am, what my understanding is who I am. And that's probably what I'm seeing. It's also mixed in with a lot of the collective's understanding of who we are. So you're not just seeing your thoughts, you're seeing the thoughts of everyone who is experiencing the same experience that we are. Mrs. Eddy's purpose was in teaching. And what she had Kimball bring a note to the normal class, and I'll find out what year and post that, but, and the note said the only reason for holding a course in Christian Science is to teach how to handle evil. And evil is nothing. And evil isn't what we think it is. But that's what she felt the purpose, and what I understand the purpose of the teachings of Christian Science are for mankind. The divine mind has brought many different teachings to mankind, and none of them are more or less valid than the other. Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, his teachings are concentrated on understanding that now is the only time. There's no time is not linear. Time does not pass. We do not age. There is only an eternal now, and everything exists within that now. Everything true and everything real. We never have to, as we progress, we're not waiting for good, and we don't have bad that happened in the past, or bad that's, it is everything, that movie, Everything All at Once. everything, everywhere, all at once. So his purpose is clear based on his teachings. He knows all of this. He knows the unreality of matter. In fact, he says that the science and health is, he thinks, an important reading for everyone, an important book to read. But his role is to emphasize and to teach now. And like David Hoffmeister, he is a Course in Miracles teacher. His role is to teach the teachings of the Course in Miracles, which are concentrated, they're a sister teaching of Christian Science. And it's concentrated on how to wake up from the belief of life and matter, from being a mesmerized self, being a small ego. That's what the Course is about, is a how-to guide. Like, there's daily lessons. That's the Course, one lesson every day. And then there's many other chapters in the book. And it's all like daily practices on how to wake up. So it's a really critical teaching for mankind. He's one of the good teachers, one of the very good teachers, one of the best, because he understands matter's unsubstantiality. He understands the power of now, meaning everything is now. He like Tolle and like Mrs. Eddy, they understood all these other teachings, but they have specific focuses that they were brought here to concentrate on. And his is teaching the mechanics of how do we wake up. He does that through movies. He has all these movies that he watched with students, and then he gives commentary, just the movies of today, and talking about how they relate to how we're waking up and how to wake up, how to overcome the ego, I guess. And he has a love for Christian Science, for Mary Baker Eddy, and for science and health. And the scientific statement of being, he has said how powerful that is. There is no life, truth, intelligence, or substance in matter. Wah! But he has his role. And there are others, Yogananda, Parasahama Yogananda had his specific teachings. Ram Dass had his. The Buddha had his. Jesus had his. There's a bunch of them. The Bhagavad Gita was a specific teaching. Not all of the teachings, brought here are completely free of human ego. And therefore, some of them are not complete in and of them. Like, they diverge a little, some diverge more than others. They become the ego is human ego, mortal mind, the mesmerized self. Different name for the same thing. It doesn't want this awakening to happen. It's fighting for its life. And it gets into each teaching, and depending on the ability of the teacher to detect when they're being tempted by an ego, the egoic way of teaching, or a spiritual way of teaching, more or less their teachings will be helpful or not helpful. And that goes for everyone who takes any of these and then teaches them to others, is their teaching his abilities will be more or less hampered by how good they are at detecting when the human ego is trying to take over the teaching. There's just a lot of mosquitoes here. So Mrs. Eddy had a specific task. She was to teach us how to handle evil. mortal mind, or the mesmerized self, the self that we made. We thought the images were real. We thought the images were us, and we got things turned around. We got cause and effect turned around. We got everything turned around, and now, since it seemed to happen, it's a dream state. It's an illusory state, and yet we're having to deal with it because we believe it's real. It's the relative perspective. But, a lot of Christian Science teachers, most of them, many of them, and Christian Scientists, church scientists, they're teaching, or they understand absolute Christian Science. Absolute is, there's just one. That one is good. There is no other power. There is no other power. Like, evil is not a power. And that the synonyms are good descriptors of what is. It was Mrs. Eddy's way of describing what is real, what is true. We are, life is a synonym because we exist. That's true. So it's a way to define isness. Well, it exists. We exist. Love defines, the word love defines existence. We are love. Love is a truth. It is a fact. It is what is. So there is no hate. Since life is, there is no death. Since soul is, there is no false identity in body. Since truth is, there is no error. Since principle is, there is no unprincipled anything. Everything moves according to a principle. There's no randomness to existence, real existence. So that's the absolute. You can look at every synonym, and each synonym describes the absolute reality of all that is. It's our isness. But when we had that momentary glitch of the Adam and Eve allegory, we listened to the serpent, the serpent idea, the false idea that said, oh, that's me in matter, that's you in matter, our food is in matter, our home is in matter, our life is in matter, it's done. It's a done deal. We fell. The absolute then can no longer be helpful, in the sense that it does not help the mesmerized self come out of itself. It is the truth. It is the truth. But now you got to have a different teaching for the mesmerized self. And that's what Mrs. Eddy's teachings were. They were focused on the mesmerized self. So the teachers of today, my teacher, my husband's teacher, they're just teaching absolute Christian Science. They're teach 10 days of absolute Christian Science. Here's this synonym. I'm going to talk about it for 2 hours. And it's here's this synonym. I'm going to talk about that for 3 hours, and because I want you to know all the absolute truths of the universe. Okay. The mesmerized self sitting there going, oh, what am I going to do with this? I better go memorize this stuff. So that means every time I have an illness, I'm going to affirm this stuff and deny the opposite of the stuff. And the mesmerized selves, the little ego, the us, the mortal mind, is walking around going, okay, what do I do with this stuff? And that's when you hear the stuff, you're not sick. You're not ill. Nothing's wrong. It's in your mind. That's what makes a mockery. That kind of stuff has made a mockery of Christian Science. And And Mrs. Eddy saw it happening. She talks about like the petty crossfire, like of each invalid, of the invalids, like buffeting them with "you're not sick" and hecatombs of gushing theories, stereotype barred speeches, and all the that are parodies against real Christian Science. I'll post the citation in there but we know, like, growing up in the church, that was what. So we grew up with that, with the petty crossfire, the like hecatombs of gushing theories, like "you're not ill, you're not sick, it's not real, blah 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 blah," and like we're trying to come up with the treatments. Well, how do you treat this? Well, I say there is no illness because God doesn't make it. And just because other people think cancer is a big deal, it's not a big deal. Like, I don't know, like everyone's coming up with all these statements of absolute statements, because they're running around going, how do you treat this? And how do you think about that? And all. It's absolute crap. Absolute teachings are absolute crap. And my teacher is the best of the absolute teachings. My primary class teacher, who's no longer my teacher, I resigned. He may not have accepted my resignation, but it doesn't matter, because they believe you're a student for life unless you become a teacher yourself. And Mrs. Eddy knew that. She knew things were going to get bad. You can see it in her writings, and I'll put some citations in this description. The mesmerized self has to come out of itself. It has to be taught humility, and it has to be taught and shown by soul, by our true being, who's outside of this illusion and not mesmerized at all. It was only like a slight piece or moment, like if we're a body, if we were, if you look at a physical body, it might be a toe, your small pinky toe that dipped into this belief of being separate from itself, being the physical being and the spiritual being. So the soul, who you really are, the great I am, or God is not confused. God is not stuck in the error, and so God is constantly providing the truth to each an individual being in the entire universe. Each individual being in the entire universe is hearing the truth from their own mind, the divine mind, and they're hearing it 24/7. But the mesmerism is what's keeping them from hearing. So because there's nothing to do, like, it's nothing on God's side that needs to be done other than the continuing of the knowing of the truth that never ends, that never stops. God never gets confused and like, maybe I am, that mortal. That we have to come to a sense of humility where we're willing to admit that pretty much everything we believe going on in this universe isn't real, but that there is someone we can look to, and that's the divine mind, God, soul, that is real and knows what's true, and that we can be asking for constant guidance on what's true and what we need to do and how we need to do everything in our lives: teach, heal, practice, cook, clean, what jobs to take, whether we should have families or not, whether we should get a divorce, whether we should move. Because the mesmerized self or the small ego does not know anything other than what it has built here. It has built this world of materiality, of material rules, and you see them, they're so different in so many different cultures. The material rules, are everything. We are so surprised when we start to realize, like when I started to learn this and I started to be taught where all my beliefs, where all I was believing all lies, it was everything. There wasn't anything that wasn't coded over and cut up and mixed up with a million lies. And we don't really willingly accept that until we've suffered enough in those lies that there's this moment, there's she says either suffering or science brings us to this truth. I think for the majority of us, it's suffering. I know for me, it was suffering. You suffer enough and you're like, okay, there becomes a willingness, an opening for humility, an opening for willingness to be ready for something different. And that's when it's God's opportunity or divine mind's opportunity to come in to our thought. It finally has an opening and has a foothold, and then can spread as we allow it to spread. So it's not like if the world always asks if God is good, why do we have all these bad things, war and poverty and disease, and it's because those things aren't real, for one, but we're blocking the light of truth. We're blocking all that is good and real by our own decision, and it was a decision to trust, to believe something. I mean, it was a mistake to believe. We got confused. We saw the images and we thought it was us. Okay, are we bad? No. Should we feel guilty? No. Should we kick ourselves and be like, oh my God, no. I mean, innocent mistake, honestly. And now we can get out as soon as we are willing to believe, willing to give up our earth constraints and all the stuff that, and most Christian scientists aren't willing, because they've been fed this bill of absolutism, and absolutism just says none of it's real. So don't worry about it. It's not like you have to work out of it since it's not real. You just have to know it's not real. And that's why that story about I always think about a hypnosis show where you have someone, a bunch of people on stage, and the hypnotist has hypnotized them all, and you're all chickens, so they're all walking around thinking they're chickens, and they're just walking around, and now you're all gonna go sit down over there and sleep, and then you're gonna do this, and so they're just doing that, and they're not there at all. And if you felt like, oh, I'm gonna get in there and I'm gonna heal them, I'm gonna fix this, and you run up on the stage and you're like, you're not a chicken, you're not a chicken, you're not a chicken, you're not a chicken, you're not a chicken. Now, how many times you tell them they're not a chicken, they're not waking up. That's the absolute truth. They're not a chicken. But you're sitting telling someone who's mesmerized, you're not a chicken, and they're just looking at you. Blank stare, blank eyes. It's not even penetrating their mesmeric state. Absolute truths do not penetrate the mesmeric state. Period. End of story. They don't penetrate the mesmeric state. The hypnotist, the one who hypnotized them, has to wake them up, and then you can say you're not a chicken, and they go, yeah, duh. duh, I'm not a chicken. You don't have to teach the person then after they've woken up, okay, I'm gonna tell you something. You're not a chicken. And you want to know why? I know I'm not a chicken. Like, their real state of being, the truth of who they are, they never believed they were a chicken. It's just this mesmeric state that they're in when they can't even think straight. Everyone walking around on this planet is mesmerized 99% of the time. And there's more and more people waking up right now. More and more. And that's why Christian Science, real Christian Science, is so needed right now, because as people awake, the ego is going to fight back. The mortal mind is fighting back and saying, oh no, I am not going to have this, because it's always fighting for its life. It's just a self-perpetuating error. It's malicious. Its intent is death, because that's all it knows. That's all it knows. And so to be a Christian Scientist in this time of our lives when people are waking up everywhere is really important. It's so important. So, I mean, and I think if we're really being honest with ourselves, we know that, the times that we were ill and our parents were sitting there going, you're God's perfect child. You don't have, the statement growing up was, a spiritual idea of God has not a single element of error, and this truth removes properly what is offensive, whatever is offensive. Properly removes whatever is offensive. We heard it over and over and over, and then we said it over and over and over to our kids. These absolute truths over and over and over. And if we're being honest, they weren't helpful to me. My dad, every time I was sick, he would come down and sit, and he would give me like 20 minutes of absolute truths. You're a spiritual idea of God. You're perfect. And his intent obviously was good. As far as mortals go, his intent was the top, was as good an intent as any. Mortals don't know any better. Mortals are mesmerized beings. The mesmerized state. It's not an actual being. It's a state. It's the mesmerized state we call mortal. His intent was good. And we got 20 minutes of those absolute statements about how we're a perfect child of God, and spiritual idea of God has not a single element of error, and on and on and on. We'd have to read in recapitulation, why don't you read the definition of man? Why don't you sit down? Okay. I had it memorized. What is man? Man is not material. He is spiritual. Now I don't have it as mesmerized, but I had like almost the whole thing memorized at one point. And not that it's not a key element of Christian Science, but it was what we had to say to ourselves when I was sick. Let's look at the definition of man. And I think if we're being honest with ourselves, as a group of beings, it just didn't help. It wasn't helpful. It didn't get us anywhere. Many people have left. Majority of the people have left the church, left the religion, died out of the religion. I mean, the slaughter is, so many people die from illnesses that are totally treatable in the medical world, because they are waiting, for a Christian Science healing, as if there's some value in treating the body physically instead of mentally. That we've missed Mrs. Eddy's point on healing. like, healing does come as a result of us waking up from our belief in matter. And it just does. Healing comes as we awaken. And it's not overnight. Yes, there's so many people out there. Healing should be instantaneous. And you've heard that your whole life. I've heard that my whole life. And if someone ever mentions that healing might take time or something like that, you've gotten an earful, or you've given an earful. We've all done both, The reason healing is instantaneous is because we only live in the now. There is only now. There is not like tomorrow and yesterday and last year. And those are all mortal mind's way of seeing things. It's like a limited way of seeing reality. It manifests itself as time. Time and space are manifestations of mortal and limited thinking. They're our creation. But so all healing is instantaneous, because all healing is ever is I am isness, like, is waking up to the truth. And waking up to the truth doesn't take time, but when we believe in the concept of time and space already, healing does seem to take time. So we've all been buffeted and pelted by all these absolute statements our whole lives. And some of us started doing that ourselves with our children, with our families, with our friends, with our patients. Many of us. And then others just left because it just didn't make any sense, and it wasn't helping them, and their family members were dying and they were ill, and they realized I got to get out of this. This is ridiculous. And so they ran away, like, save yourselves. And I don't blame them at all. And but that is not Mrs. Eddy's fault, and that is not Mrs. Eddy's teaching. It is the ego ran wild with her teachings and said, well, these are so helpful to get people out of the ego. I'm going to try and distort them in any way possible. And absolute teachings of today, like my teacher teaches, that is a complete ego takeover of Mrs. Eddy's teachings. Her teachings are to teach us how to unwind from our mesmeric state that we're currently in, seemingly. I'll add that for those of you who need that. Just remember that that's the truth. It's a seeming mesmeric state, not real, and yet we believe it, so it seems real to us. And now we got to wake up from it. So the process she talks about in that article I mentioned yesterday, and I'll put the name of it here, but proper sense of sin, repentance, and an understanding of good. In that order, you have to have a proper sense of sin first, repentance second, and then an understanding of good comes from all of that. It's the third step, and it's what comes out of being woken up when the hypnotist lets you wake up and wakes you up, and then someone walks up to you and says you're a chicken. That's the understanding of good. And you're like, yeah, I know. You're not a chicken. And yeah, I know. Or it's like understanding of good just is, you already understand it at the level of soul. You only seem to not understand it because you're blocking it with these errors. And the errors that she calls sin, there's every name in the book for the errors that have us wound into the mesmeric state. Once you know the truth, you can't be mesmerized again. So you have to be shown the truth first by being shown the error that you're believing. Because once you know the truth, you can't be mesmerized again. But you can't understand the truth while you're in a mesmeric state with someone just telling you truthful statements. You know, you're God's spiritual ID. You're all the. So it's an interesting. I mean, I've had so many, like a friend of mine, when this was dawning on me, and I was telling her, you know, we were talking about, you know, you have to listen and be humble and be willing to accept where you have, be willing to hear where you have been misled and you've accepted errors about yourself and about your world. And so you have to listen for those errors. And once those errors are uncovered, then the truth is just obvious. It's obvious you're not a chicken. And, just, you know, the mortal mind is so, right? You know, no. We're not supposed to concentrate on the error. We're not supposed to talk about the error, think about the error, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. No, we're only supposed to, like, concentrate on the truth. And the truth is what's gonna, you know, when you start talking to people about Christian Scientists who are really mesmerized by the religion, by the church, by, you know, the false sense of Christian Science, they are going to fight you big time on this concept of uncover error and uncover error and it turns a lie upon you. They will turn the lie upon you. But I mean, once you start recognizing that the teachings of Christian Science is about how to uncover and handle error in all of its million forms, then when you start reading Science and Health again, and you start reading prose works again, and you're like, oh yeah, she did say this, didn't she? Like, everywhere that the error has to be uncovered. I mean, there's nowhere where she's like, ignore the error, don't think about the error. She is eyes wide open. She's telling you, eyes wide open. And you start to see that when you're kind of become humble and willing to, okay, maybe there's another way. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe the reason I am not been healed since I was 15 years old, and I give the same treatment, the same healing every Wednesday service that I have to stand up is the healing I had 30 years ago. Maybe there's a reason why I'm not having healings recently. Maybe there's a reason why I still am having so many difficulties in my life. Maybe there's a reason why my family members have all left the church. When you're willing to have some humbleness, whether you've suffered enough or you're just humble enough to let it, then you'll start to see the stuff, pointing out the error. And then you'll start to be willing to listen and follow, listen to God and surrender the error. A proper sense of sin is to know what sins are claiming you. Sin is a claim. It's a claim on you. It's a claim on you from this mesmeric state. Like, you are a chicken is a sin in that example. It's a claim on you that you're a chicken, but you're not. It's not something that you did wrong. It's not something to feel bad about. It's not something to feel guilt about. It's not something, you had no choice. Eckhart Tolle is really good at making it clear in his teachings that your hands are tied. And this stuff, it's not like you chose it. In one sense, you chose it. But in another sense, it almost chose you. It interfered with your logic. And so sin is a claim on you that you haven't yet identified as unreal. And that's what we're asking to be uncovered. Obviously, if we go after it from the inside the mesmeric state and sit and create a list of all our bad qualities, our bad traits, the things that we think are not good about us, and things we, you're never going to get anywhere, because you're operating from within the mesmeric state going, I have an addiction and I need to just quit my addiction. I just need to stop. And that addiction is, whatever. Or I have to tell you, most of the time, the way mortal mind uncovers error is wrong. It uncovers it as your fault. It uncovers it as something real that needs to then be overcome. Like, now that I know I have low self-esteem, I'm going to set out on a path of discovery, of becoming, feeling like I'm worthy again. And that's not gonna work. I think we've all tried a lot. Sometimes it does. Sometimes these things help. Human will should be exercised only in submission to the divine will. That's not the exact quote, but I can tell you it's fruitless to go that route. When divine mind uncovers a sin to you, you don't feel guilty. You don't cling to it and think, oh my God, I'm a bad person. You start to see it immediately as not you and not yours, and the divine mind separates that claim from you, since it never was true. So if you allow divine mind to lead you on this wonderful uncovering and this untangling and unsnarling journey, then it will be fruitful. And so the divine mind uncovers the errors for us. A proper sense of sin is to allow the errors to be uncovered, and then to to be open to that okay, that's a claim that I accepted. And then repentance is interesting. Letting it go. Totally, repentance, when John the Baptist said, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Jesus said, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That's been misinterpreted to be, you're a sinner and stop sinning. But really what it meant was, the claim of sin has you. The claim of life and matter has you. All you have to do is turn away from it. You're always turned towards God, turned towards the truth, because you can't be anything else, since that is your core truth. But you do have to turn away from the error, meaning you know what it is and then you walk the other way. Repentance is a change of thought, allowing this change of thought to change you, to overcome the error. And then the understanding of good is the truth that was always there, that you're not a chicken. It was always there. And really, no one has to tell you that once the error has been uncovered. And it's definitely, a lot of Christian Scientists are going to have a hard time, seemingly, accepting this, because we have been so deadened by the reliable religionists and the so-called Christian Scientists asleep that have been the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, been leading us all down the wrong path at 900 miles an hour, where we don't talk about evil, error. We don't start with the error. We always start with the truth, and we sandwich in the error. So all the treatments, the formulas that they give us, that they're not allowed to give us, but they do it anyways, is to sandwich the error between statements of truth. That's a formula. Obviously, I don't know, when we're learning everything, well, maybe this isn't a formula. Maybe not. All the ways that we've been hoodwinked. It's just crazy. I've been doing this self-examination work for a while now. I think it's been 15 years when I first was willing to accept a different way of seeing Christian Science that turned out to be Mrs. Eddy's way, turned out to be the right way. But self-examination is examine yourselves and see how much sin claims of you and how much of that claim you admit as valid or comply with. That's from Proseworks and from that article. But it's done totally with the soul leading the whole thing. But a willingness on your part, the part of the mesmerized self, to be humble, to be open, and to be listening for what is uncovered. And what's uncovered is like always, I was believing that about myself. I was believing that. You mean that's, and it's like so freeing. It's like every time some error is uncovered, you don't go back to it. I mean, some errors it may be being uncovered for 10 years, 20 years, a lifetime, because you're just, the first things that are uncovered are kind of like the low-hanging fruit, the things that, think of yourself as wrapped in a yarn ball and you're at the center of the yarn ball. It starts with the outer edges of the yarn ball, and like one strand after another gets unwrapped, and then another one gets unwrapped as the errors get presented, and then we go, oh yeah, duh, that's not real. I was totally messed up thinking that. But some of them claims, some of them more insidious claims, like low self-esteem, is a core error, because it is at the root of every error it is often at the root of every error that a being has accepted, or 80% of the errors. Because the error of low self-esteem or high self-esteem, but most of us have low self-esteem. But some have both. Men tend to have there's no generalizations. Let's stay away from generalizations. But it goes to the core of the error. Low self-esteem at its very core is the belief in separation, the belief that you're not the omnipotent, omniscient, eternal, immortal, perfect I am. That you are not good at this and not good at that, and all these bad things that core separation. So that one might take a lifetime. If it does, but it doesn't have to. But when you first start the work, your ball is big of all the errors, and so you might hit a low self-esteem one here. You might hit it over and over and over again, and all of a sudden every day you're having different revelations about things you had accepted about yourself that aren't true. And it's just, and maybe they all are in this certain area of thinking. And then maybe after like a month of being so free and feeling like you're getting your handcuffs off and whatever, then you bump over and you start having these other errors uncovered. I mean, you don't have control over it. It's the divine mind that's controlling the whole thing, the timing, which errors would be covered at which time. Everyone in the universe, if they were doing this, I mean, it's an event that we have as the mesmerized self, have no control over. So then we might bump over to another set of errors that start getting uncovered. And then after maybe a year or even less, all of a sudden we start having experience. Maybe we get a job. we're led to a certain job, and the circumstances at that job bring up to the surface a lot of the low self-esteem errors, like a bigger group or a deeper group of self-esteem errors. And we might be working on those every day until we start to get at the root of that, and you're learning, because the circumstances at that job are bringing up things that you weren't being brought up when you first were being told, or when you first were being led to look at self-esteem and what your beliefs about yourself are. And so you might be there at that job working through those, and once you've worked through them satisfactorily, and all of a sudden you're a different person. You might be led to leave that job, or you might stay at that job, whatever purpose that job serves for you. Everything in our existence, I think, in this material universe is it is orchestrated by the divine mind, if you allow the divine mind to, if you listen and follow, and you allow the divine mind to orchestrate the event in your life, everything that you do and everything that you're led to their sole purpose is to assist in your awakening. They don't have any value in and of themselves. Like a family gathering on a level of mortal mind is, you're good people, you're good family people, maybe you're good Christians and you maintain your family values. A mortal mind's going to have a million reasons why a family gathering is like, just, it means like you're doing your job as being a good person. Like all these different things of I have a good job, I have a home that I care for, or things like that. Mortal mind believes that those are something in and of themselves, that's like maybe the point of life. But no, the point of anything you experience in this mortal existence, from the divine mind's perspective, if you give the divine mind control, is to wake you up. If you don't give the divine mind control, the human egotism, the mesmerized state, thinks that it's just supposed to get more and more of these things. These are the things that I need to make my life happy. And you see everyone working hard to get their 401k balance, like work on my 401k, pay off my home, have a good job, get a good education, or things like that, because the mortal mind is saying, this is what you got to do. And it's wanting to perpetuate the dream, perpetuate our belief that everything here is valid and real. Well, the mind doesn't work that way. And it's going to put everything, when you finally give over and surrender your will to the divine mind, everything that comes into your experience, conversations, you don't just randomly run into people. Like this car was like coming like right at me and stuff, and I was keenly aware that I don't, like, nothing, there's no coincidences. Things seem to happen for a reason. You're brought certain places for a reason. You're told not to go to certain places for a reason. You're brought to different jobs. You're led to leave that job for another experience that's going to give you different opportunities to awaken. If you're with a partner in a relationship that no longer serves your growth and your awakening, you'll be led out of that relationship, and then maybe you'll be led back to it when you did have the awakenings that you needed that you weren't having in that relationship. Or maybe you'll be brought to a different relationship, a different marriage, a different partner, a different friend. You may be led, the judgment, you learn to stop judging everything as good or bad. Nothing's either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And you just allow, and you're just like, oh, what am I going to learn from this one? What am I learning from that? Like Bashar is really good at, Bashar is another teacher, when people talk about the bad experiences they've had or the illnesses they've had. He's like, good for you. What a wonderful opportunity. What a wonderful experience. And true. I mean, even illnesses, they're wonderful opportunities, because the illness is just a manifestation of the error already there. So if the illness starts to surface and you start to really suffer from it, it means the error is surfacing. The error is that was always there is now like kicking up a fight. And you now have the opportunity to ask and to listen. Okay, what do I need to see in these circumstances? There were illnesses that I experienced that the sole purpose of them was to make me face my fear of going to a doctor or going to an emergency room. My strong belief system that there was something bad about those things. There was something evil, inherently evil about going to a doctor, or inherently evil about going to an emergency room, or having health insurance, or taking over-counter medication. So many of my experiences and some of my family members' experiences were for the sole purpose of bringing to our attention the belief systems we have about the medical profession and what Christian Science is really about. Is it about, it really made us face and come face to face with, do we believe that Christian Science is about healing the sick and going to doctors and having an alternative healthcare system? Because Mrs. Eddy said, healing physical illness is only the smallest part of Christian Science, the smallest. And we had to come, as myself and others, face to face with where we had accepted that Christian Science was an alternative healthcare system, and that something bad would happen if we didn't use that alternative healthcare system. And we were so surprised. I mean, it was surprising and it was difficult. There was a lot of difficulty in coming to terms with deep errors like that when you're fighting it. You're fighting it because everything you grew up with, all the, the mesmerized self is mesmerized. I mean, it took this beautiful teaching, this beautiful revelation, all this work that Mrs. Eddy did and brought to us, and it took it and it was like, I'm gonna roll this up in a ball and I'm gonna chuck it, and it played and messed with it in every single way, like in that book I shared, as someone who had left Christian Science. I think it was Father, Mother, God. I think it was that book. And like, she was a teenager and she had problems seeing. I think she had really bad problems seeing. And her dad was the CSB, and she went to see, an eye doctor, and they said she needed glasses. And he said, no, you will be healing this or you will not. You will never be getting glasses. This will be, you heal it or you don't, but that's it. And obviously she went away when she could. She left Christian Science. But look at how bad the mesmerized self messed that up for her and for her family and for her teacher, who's a CSB, and then all his students. I'm pretty sure. I'll have to go back and make sure that it's true that, but if the mesmerized self could, it would be like, I did good. I did good. This was the good. I won this one. I'm going to go get more. That's why we call it evil, because it is. It's the only evil there is. The state of mesmerism is all the evil there is. Hell is that state of mesmerism. That's all the hell there is. So this, for me, the process of self-examination was 80% uncovering the errors that I learned from the Christian Science church and religion, 50% of those were errors that I learned from my primary class teacher. And then like the other percent, and I'm still doing it every day. I don't know. You cannot go through this mortal existence without doing self-examination on a daily basis. Mrs. Eddy said, every morning you pick the weeds every day, and the next morning there's more weeds and you have to pick them again. Kimball told his students that was wrong. And he was one of her best students. And he taught his students that she was wrong when she said that. She made too much of error when she did that. I mean, if I was a Kimball student and he was telling me that Mrs. Eddy was wrong, that would have been a cause for alarm bells. But human egotism managed to convince most of his students that he was right and she was wrong. I know my teacher has said things that Mrs. Eddy was wrong about, and because of my loyalty to him, I was, okay, interesting, okay, there was an openness to believe that. There was a willingness to believe that she was wrong. So the majority of my self-examination has been about how I was so wrapped up in a false sense of Christian Science, in the church religious science, Christian Science, and not real Christian Science. A real Christian Scientist is a miracle. That's what she says. And I know why now. Because it is hard. Because the mesmerized state does not want that. Does not want one real Christian Scientist, no less thousands, no less hundreds of thousands. This mesmerized state is actively protecting itself at all times, and actively trying to gain more ground in our thought, because that's all it knows how to do. It just knows how to exist and to procreate and to, it's a self-perpetuating lie. And so we have to be as alert, as active as it is. But it's awfully simple. Our job is awfully simple. It's a listening and following. It's like super, super duper simple compared to like what we thought Christian Science was the constant treating and the constant arguments, and we bring our books on vacation with us in case we get ill, and then if we get ill we're just sitting and reading and sitting and reading and reading and reading and all this work we're doing and the studying. And yeah, I do. I mean, I've read and I've read and I've read and I've studied, but when this kind of sets in and you start to get a rhythm going with the self-examination, like it leads everything. It brings everything to you. Like an article that you need is just all of a sudden in front of your eyes, in front of your face, and somehow you happen to pick up a book and it fell over there, and that one toppled that one, and then you were just sitting here, and then, oh, that's interesting. Or a social media post, you're flipping through TikTok, and you weren't even gonna turn on TikTok, and then you flip through it and you weren't paying attention, and all of a sudden you're paying attention, and there's this something that someone says and you're like, oh my God, and jobs that you're led to where circumstances bring up errors that you never knew were deep within your thought, family situations that bring up other errors, relationships bring up a ton of errors. Some of the deepest errors are brought up through relationships it's very easy once you get the hang of it. I mean, what's coming up in thought is like, it's rocking your world. Because all of a sudden what I thought was true is no longer true, and that's difficult at first. Wow, that wasn't true. Yikers! I really like, and sometimes like the stronger we hold on to our own human will, our own human sense of things, the more prolonged and protracted the experience will be, and the more difficult it will be. But then even that teaches us, well, maybe next time I'm gonna let go a little sooner. I'm gonna give in a little quicker, and then you find out, well, what if I give in to the wrong thing? And I think, well, and that, you know, that was such a fear. Well, what if I'm led the wrong way, or I hear the wrong thing, or I do the wrong thing, or I'm not hearing, or that's all part of our growth and part of our experiences, learning how to do all that. And so we like give ourselves a break and say, I might make mistakes doing this. I might say the wrong thing. I might do the wrong thing. I might, you know, go the wrong way, but at least I'm trying. And I think that's the thing, is like, you're trying, you want this, you're in earnest, and that's the only thing that matters. It will all unfold in the right time, in the right way, and just let go. And in the mortal dream, in the human existence, gaining knowledge is difficult, gaining experience is difficult, earning money is difficult. Everything that, you know, is mortal is difficult. You have to work at it. But in the spiritual world, it's like letting go. We let go more and more and more and more and more, and we just find things naturally happening and naturally occurring, and errors naturally being covered. And what I'm going to talk about in these videos, I never know. And things are coming to my thought. Conversations are occurring with family and friends. I'm watching TikToks because I love TikTok, and thoughts, you know, like ideas come, and then I'm getting ready and these thoughts are coming, and I still don't know what I'm going to talk about, and I don't care to know anymore. I kind of pay attention to the thoughts that are kind of percolating, and the revelations that are coming. If I'm led to bring something with me or do something, I do. If I don't, and I get there and I don't have it, I'm not thinking, well, I wonder why I didn't bring it. I wonder why, you know. And there's a lot of pondering, but it's like so freeing. But it definitely has. I've been doing this for, I think, 15 years at least. And it didn't start out that way. It started out, you know, because the errors when you're first starting out, it's just incredible what you were believing. And you think, you know, you just don't realize it. Our mind's a nasty booger. Make no mistakes about it. It has done a good job of locking us into error. And so there, you know, it was a lot harder in the beginning. And I can say that it's not stopped, but it's gotten easier. I've gotten better at it. And you're going to get better at it too. And it might be hard in the beginning. Just go with it. Go with the flow. Recognize you'll get better at it. And just be open. Be open to the books that you're led to read, or the movies you're led to watch, or the people you're led to talk to, or the walks you're led to take, or the jobs you're led to leave or take, or the relationships you're led to leave or take, the churches you're led to leave or go to, the I mean, you might be led to go to a service, even though you've left the church, because when you're there, you're wondering why I was led to come here. Why did I feel like I needed to come here? And maybe you realize, when I was here, the people here made me feel like I was the worst person on the planet because I didn't look like them, I didn't talk like them, and they just thought I was obviously a bad Christian Scientist, a bad mother, a bad this or a bad that, and they were mean to me. And I've been carrying that. I've been carrying that shame with me this whole time because of these other mesmerized cells walking around convincing my mesmerized self that all these things were true about me. So maybe you're led to go to that service because there's things that need to be uncovered that are only going to be uncovered there, and that you're being led to face them head on, and you're going to have your healing there at that moment when you recognize, this is where I felt so much shame for so many years, and it's not real. It's not real about them. It wasn't real about me. It's all lies. They suffered as much from those lies as I suffered from those lies, and I can let that go now. But that can't, errors like that, they fester until we're obedient to how God is going to unwind us from all these errors. And there's a time and a place for the unwinding, and it is not up to us. Everyone is being unwound in the way that's best for them, and it's not up to any of us, and it's not our business how others are being unwound, or if we think they're being unwound or not, or if they're moving too slowly or not, or too quickly. And our progress is not up to us. It is completely operated by this level of the soul, the level of our true being, and we do not control it. The less you try and control it, the better. And just allow it to happen. The less you fight it, the better. And the willingness to, some of these things, are really like closely held beliefs we have, and it seems to be really hard. So maybe some of the really tough ones that are really at the core of some illness that we have, maybe they're not ready to be released yet. And so you think the healing's taking a long time because there's so many other errors, they're being released first. And eventually the errors that are more directly related to the illness you're suffering from, those errors can't be gotten to until these others are handled and seen for their unreality. Like there seems to be the unraveling process is, there's a rhyme and a reason to it. It's not ours, but the divine mind knows how we're wrapped in and how to get us out. And I think, when you look at temporary means, going to a doctor or an ER, taking over the counter medication, it definitely makes more sense that temporary means are provided to us, because if you've gone 70 years of your life without one single day of self-examination, and you're confronted with heart failure, and you want to have your quick, instantaneous Christian Science healing, the truth is that belief of heart failure is just simply many, many errors about your belief in life and matter, and the collective belief of life and matter. And if you haven't started the process of self-examination and releasing these errors of a lifetime of believing you're the matter body, the personality, then temporary means are provided for just those circumstances, bypass surgery, blood pressure medications, cholesterol medications, stents, all that stuff. It doesn't matter. It's all part of the dream anyways. It's as much part of the dream as any of it. There's no any part of the dream that's worse than the other part of the dream. There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. It's only bad if you think it's bad. It's only going to delay your progress if you think it's going to delay your progress. So, and then if you're walking through your day and you have a headache, and you're like, well, your treatment or your correction thought isn't working, and you're led to some Tylenol, then you're led to some Tylenol. Is that bad? Are you thinking there is something either good or bad? Like Tylenol bad? Heart disease, like heart bypass surgery bad? Chemo bad? Then you're making a mountain out of a molehill, and you're making a mockery of Christian Science. And you don't know it. I didn't know it. None of us know it, because we're saying, I'm going to use my Christian Science to heal this headache. I'm going to use my Christian Science to heal heart disease. I'm going to use my Christian Science. And where is that? Where in this understanding of how it all works, where is it where we use our Christian Science to heal the body? We're really in the business of uncovering the errors that are making us think that we're separate from perfection. We are perfect now. There's only a massive amount of beliefs telling us we're not. And those are the beliefs that need to be uncovered and let go of. Using our Christian Science to heal something is is something that the mesmeric state has convinced us that's what we do, because it's an alternative healthcare system. But some of the most insidious beliefs, are in material existence, maybe at the root of what you're experiencing. And so temporary means are there. They're there. We're led to them. I'm led to them all the time. Because it's not important. It's not important that I'm using my Christian Science to heal the body. It's important that I'm listening and following and doing self-examination and have a proper sense of sin and repentance. That's what's important. Remembering that who I am. Remember who you are. That's what's important. Oh, I'm a spiritual being. I'm soul. This isn't real. One of my friends was at our house, and he was helping me see this, see things differently, and he was helping my family see things differently. We had asked him to come, and one morning I put the teapot on, and we had a stainless steel teapot, all stainless steel. And it got really hot, and we knew that, and we knew to but I just didn't think about it. We put it on this kettle on the stove with water, and it, was ready. And when I wasn't around, he grabbed it. Didn't know it was one of these wicked kettles that's gonna burn you. And he burned his hand picking it up to make his tea. And later on, a couple hours later, when we were talking, he said, it came up about how to see, what to do when maybe you have something like that occur. And he hadn't told me about it. And he said, he told me this morning, I grabbed and I was mortified because I was still learning and he's like, I said, what did you do? And he said, I just knew that wasn't me. I wasn't the one being burned. I'm not the personality. I'm not the body. I'm not that self. But he wasn't saying it from a standpoint of absolute statements, that he had been making these absolute statements about himself in order to heal. He knew, because he had been doing self-examination for a long, long time. And he had uncovered all the beliefs about being a matter body. Or a huge number, he had uncovered them all, and to the point that he was helping others. And so even when it happened, maybe he obviously felt it, but he wasn't tempted to give all that up, all that uncovering and all that, everything that was uncovered when, during that process. He wasn't tempted to check it all and think he had burned himself. It wasn't even it's just like if I sat here telling you you're a chicken, you wouldn't be like, oh, maybe I am. The temptation is not even there. You wouldn't there was nothing that I could say to you to make you believe you're a chicken. And it's the same way. The hand seems to get burned, and there's nothing that can happen in this material existence that could tempt my teacher, or I call him my teacher, but he's my friend, to think that he burned himself and that he was the human being that burns. And we get to that point through the continual daily practice of self-examination and all this focus on healing, not the religious, the reliable religionists and the Christian Scientists in sheep's clothing, and then just the innocents who are just innocently caught up in all these false teachings. All this stuff has made us focused in a frenzy on healing. We're focused so much on healing, and mortal mind loves that. The human ego, the mesmerized state loves that, because the focus is in the wrong place on physical healing. Physical healing is the result of this growing awareness that we start to have of who we really are, our true identity. We're having an identity crisis. All illness is mental illness. And the mental illnesses are, we aren't who we think we are. But we think we're the chicken and we're not. And that's the whole issue. If you think you're a chicken and you're not, you're going to be subject to all the beliefs about chickenhood. All the illnesses that chickens get in the life of a chicken and all that. And if you're the chicken, and say you get some chicken disease that all the other chickens get, and so you've been told by the other chickens that are Christian Science chickens, say this and think this and do that. This is a good treatment for that illness, and try that, and read this article on that illness, and that article, somebody had a healing of the same illness that some other chicken had. And you're running around in your little chicken coop, and you're okay, well, what statement in science and health will heal me of this disease? And well, what if you just wake up from the concept that you're a chicken? But that's actually what we're supposed to be doing. And we do have healings along the way. Obviously, there are healings for different reasons. Sometimes we have healings because there is a necessity, whether we're learning something from it or there's a necessity of it. The divine mind really governs the whole process of healing. if a healing is needed, it will be had. If you have a role to play in the awakening of mankind, you will have the healings that need to be had in order to make sure you're going to be able to fulfill your purpose. If you are suffering from some error, and it is, the divine mind knows what to do in every situation, and some things will lead to quick healings and some things will not. And the reason is because it's more important for you to wake up from the dream of life and matter than to be comforted by having all these different healings, thinking that's where it's at. If we keep on going thinking that's where it's at, then we're just going to stay here in this state of material existence, thinking healings is that, or that's where it's at. Physical healings is it. I got it. I'm going to go along and I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to make lots of money and I'm going to lecture because healings, that's where it's at. And I'm going to teach everybody that that's where it's at. Well, that's not where it's at. So the divine mind, your soul, your being does not want you to be comfortable in that belief that that's where it's at, that all the good in the universe is coming from because Christian Scientists are having these healings of a headache. And instead of taking Tylenol, they're calling their practitioner every time they have a headache. And instead of taking cough medicine, they're calling their Christian Scientist practitioner every time they have a cold. Or they're getting out their books and they're like chopping it with these statements of affirmations and denials, and that's not where it's at. Mortal mind wants us to think that's where it's at. It's at it in true healing, the true unwinding from our belief that we are matter bodies, that we are separate from God, that we are the image and not the image maker. We're being robbed of true healing because we've been convinced that's where it's at, or we've allowed someone in the movement, friend, family, church member, to convince us. We're being robbed of true healing. We're being robbed of awakening from the dream. And what's worse is, like, if you even like speak, if you were even to talk to most Christian Scientists of today and say what I've just said to you, like, having a Christian Science healing for every little illness is not where it's at. Oh my God, you're blasphemous. This is blasphemy. They're not going to use the word blasphemy, but they're thinking blasphemy, and they're looking at, and they're going to tell other people that's blasphemy, and they're going to like lock you out. And wow, it seriously is their, much of the religion is, it's so in that people have, because they've allowed a religion and a church to tell them how to be a Christian Scientist, they are, Mrs. Eddy calls it a state of moral idiocy, allowing so many errors in our thought that it's a state of moral idiocy. And we're listening to those people, or we're around those people all the time, and they're hateful, they're spiteful, they're self-righteous, and it's a claim on them. It's all a claim on them. It's not really who they are as the innocent spiritual being that we are. I mean, and yet we can't allow them to control us, and we can't allow their thoughts to control us and their actions to control us. And they're running the churches. They're the ones running the churches. They're the ones making all the rules and kicking out anyone who's gay or, you know, taking medication, or, you know, like in the Ram in the Thicket book where there was a blind woman who gave a testimony at a Wednesday evening service, and afterwards she went into the foyer and someone came and pushed her against the wall and said, never give another testimony until you've had a healing of blindness. And they're the ones that are doing that they're running the churches. They're running the mother church. I mean, they're running the associations. Because a matter-based religion, that's how it's run, and they're running it like a matter-based religion. They're believing it's a matter-based religion. They're believing they were mesmerized long before, and they're unwilling to open up their thought to the truth. And they can be dangerous. They can be mentally dangerous malpractitioners. I've been malpracticed by these people, but self-examination is the silver bullet to handling malpractice. People can be malpracticing me right and left, but the self-examination enables me to allow any errors that might attract their malpractice and make it real to me. It allows those errors to surface so that they cannot be a magnet for other people's malpractice and other people's thoughts. I mean, the world is everyone in the world in this level of what we see on earth. They're malpracticing 99% of the time, because everything that's not true, everything we think that is not true, is malpractice. If something that's not true and you think it's malpractice. It can't, whether it's malicious, ignorant, you know, we learn all those in class, the different forms of malpractice. There's one other, I'll look those up and put them in but everyone's doing it all the time. And only if you're doing self-examination can you start to not be affected by the malpractice of the world. And like a lot of the illnesses, there's so much malpractice in the world about certain illnesses that, you know, the temporary means are really coming into play a lot more lately, because if you haven't been doing self-examination your whole life and you're just now learning, you're up against such a strong belief in error that it makes no sense to suffer while you're catching up and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. It makes no sense to suffer. What does suffering bring you other than closer to God? And that kind of suffering isn't going to bring you closer to God. It's going to make you not, it does the opposite. So when you're doing this self-examination and you're having these moments of clarity of what you had believed about Christian Science religion, Christian Science church, family, relationships, jobs, saving for retirement, anything, believing a political group, that one political group in matter is better than another political group in matter, and that you should join one because that's the political group of your church. When that's uncovered to you and you gain the freedom from that, it's like, whoa, oh my God, that's awesome. It's such a freedom. But there's no need to suffer while all of these beliefs are surfacing. You'll be led to whatever is needed for you to continue your progress. So the self-examination is a silver bullet to malpractice. But sometimes it's not worth what's it called? Rattling the rattlesnake's nest, or rattling the nest. Sometimes it's not worth upsetting mortal mind with, especially in the beginning when you're learning this stuff about the church scientists, Christian Sciences, and sheep's in wolves clothing, about all of us, that we got misled, especially like the things where, they're really strong, like footholds of every healing is an instantaneous healing, or see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. We don't speak about error. We don't do that. I've been told we don't do that. When someone asks you something and you listen for an answer and you give them an answer that is not what you've heard other people in the church say before, and they try to heal you mentally of where they think you've gone astray. So many well-meaning Christian Scientists are going to try and heal you, which is malpractice, because they're trying to heal you of something that you're doing right by listening, and so that means they're doing wrong. You can only be right or wrong, and if they're trying to heal you of something that you're being led to do, then it's malpractice, and they don't know it, and they're going around malpracticing. And it's just so rampant in the church today. The churches are really governed by the people, really led in a lot of situations to keep the churches going. They're led that way in many instances because they believe there's some thing in the building, in the religion, in the church, that is so important, it's worth saving. Many of them, and it's not that Mrs. Eddy uncovered the root of all evil and is taught us how to handle that. It's not that. It's something else in their mind that makes it so more saving, like because it's an alternative healthcare system, or a lot of them just have a loyalty. They have a loyalty error, that they are just loyal to a cause for being loyal, and merely think that loyalty is what's important. Many of them are going there just because that's what they've been doing their whole lives, and they would feel guilty if they didn't, and they don't want that guilt, and they're just going to keep going. Or and then others, like, a friend of mine has a teacher that got excommunicated, and probably for a good reason. Not all excommunications are for bad reasons. Many of them, many a good teacher has been excommunicated. I think that happens when they knew it was time to graduate from church and religion. They didn't. So something happened in the church, was used by the divine mind to get them out, to excommunicate them. But some of them, like one teacher of a friend of mine, she writes a book a year. Her association is like a big bound book every year, and it's supposed to you know, like the Starbucks symbol being a serpent is, or like the medical profession symbol being a serpent, and explaining how that serpent means the medical profession is the root of all evil. And that was before, you know, and huge going into all this stuff about this stuff. As if, you know, our concept of sin is not the whole of sin. Sin existed before the human concept of sin existed. I'm paraphrasing. But this teacher teaches, you know, that evil is trying to get us to leave the churches, or evil is trying to get us to leave the religion. And so anything that is done, like I was told by this person, this friend of mine, when I left, you know, shame. The words shame. Shame on you. Shame on you. You should know better. Shame on you. You're contributing to the downfall of Christian Science. These people, they honestly believe that. She honestly believes that. And her teacher honestly teaches them that. And they're all kinds. We're all kinds. We've all been there. I was there. I mean, I am not exempt from all of this. This was all who I was at one time. And it's just a matter of, do you want something different? Do you want something better? Do you want real Christian Science? Because real Christian Science is a miracle, a marvel in the universe of mortal mind. Real Christian Scientist. And many of them are outside the church and religion. There are more people outside of the church and religion than there are inside that read science and health, that you could, if you wanted to label them, you could label them a Christian Scientist. They're probably way past the point of needing a label, wanting a label. But there's more out there than in. As should be, you know. It's an individual thing. Mrs. Eddy was here to teach each of us individually what we needed to wake up from the mistaken assumption that we're matter. And it's between us and God. It's not between me and anyone else. It's between me and God. It's between you and God. It's nobody else's business. Once you have the book, once you have Proseworks, that's all you need. You don't need a lifetime of going to a building. You don't need to sit and read, to be honest. You don't need to sit and read science and health every day, studying it every day in the Bible every day, in Proseworks every day. Once you get all this, and once you're like, oh yeah. Because, like, why do you need to, like, get it then every day? I got to get it again and get it again and get it again and get it again. No, I get it. And now I'm doing the self-examination work every day that allows me to keep the errors from, you know, to keep uprooting the errors that keep landing in my garden. You know, as long as we're here in this material existence, we are going to have to do self-examination every day. And here, I mean, you know, here, because there's no actual place. It has to be done every day for the rest of our lives while we still believe we're in a material existence, until, you know, we no longer see ourselves here in matter. And then if we continue on, you know, if we haven't sufficiently done all the self-examination, we'll get ample more opportunities to do it and continue to practice it. And even the highest teachers, Mrs. Eddy did it every day. Obviously, she did it every day. She told us she did it every day. She told Mr. Kimball that, and he told his students that's wrong. But Eckhart Tolle has to do it every day. David Hoffmeister has to do it every day. We all have to do it every day. There's no getting out of it. And most of our teachers have never done it, don't even know what it is. When I said the words I was talking to a teacher, called me to get a recommendation from someone that wanted to join her class, and I mentioned the word self-examination. Oh yeah, she does self-examination. That teacher, it was like she went like, in all of a sudden I was aware she was like all of a sudden, I'm evil, and she's been just notified that I'm evil and that she needed to get off the phone with me right away. And you're like, but it's in the book. I mean, it's in Science and Health. She does mention it. She does talk about it. There's articles on it. But, okay, if you think I'm evil, because that's fine. But that's so rampant. So, I mean, the experiences that we've all had, and I'm sure you've had them. I mean, yeah, it's a little crazy. But that's how the mesmerized state works, and that's how it works. I don't have anything. That's all that seems to be coming at this moment.